What's up everyone, I'm RoyalJelly. Hope you're doing great today because today I'll be showing you how to terraform cliffs, hills, and ponds. Hopefully by the end of today's video, you'll learn a bit of how I like to terraform stuff and you'll be able to use all the tips and tricks that I'll be talking about here for your own builds and terraforms. So without any further ado, just sit back, put your learning caps on, and enjoy!
Well, we are going to start with the cliffs, shall we? Once you find the spot and you've cleared everything you need to clear, the first step is to start working on determining the edge of your cliff. For this step, you have to decide where you want your erosion sites. As you can see, these are the spots where the edge goes a bit down, and this, I reckon, is the secret to good looking cliffs. Another big tip you should follow is to play with the height and depth of the cliff edge, and do not leave more than 5 blocks with the same height or depth, because otherwise your cliff will look plain and building it will be a pain in the back. Next up, you have to build these stone structures next to those sites of the erosion, to make it look like the terrain really eroded in that area. Now it's time to finally start building the cliff itself. The first thing is to connect the cliff edge with the ground. The way in which I build this is different depending on the height of the cliff. If it's tall, I connect the edge and the ground with a concave shape like you can see. And if they are short, I do more of a diagonal shape, like we'll see later. The way to create the shape of this is to do triangular shapes and concaves. Also, below the erosion sites, you might want to add a dirt platform as we did there to symbolize the erosion. One really good advice is to work in an area and then go back, watching from different perspectives. Also, I like to make sure there is something supporting the dirt in the edges, whether it is a slab, a stair, or a full block. Also, maybe work a bit on the terrain above the cliff to be able to see more of a complete sight of how the cliff will look. Remember when I told you to play with the height and depth variation? Well, this is why. I purposely didn't do that here, and as you can see, I had a difficult time trying to terraform this area. Also, I want to use this time to tell you guys that terraforming is a lot of trial and error, especially when you're learning, so don't worry if it doesn't look right at first. As you can see, it took me a lot of time and tries to finally get this area to a point where I liked it. Once you like the shape of the cliff, it's time to pick up your stone stairs and slab and start detailing the shapes. No particular steps for this one, but just to add loads of them to the bottom of the cliff. The next step is to add texture to it. I recommend doing a gradient of darker blocks at the bottom and lighter blocks at the top. I would normally use grey concrete powder for ocean cliffs more than this type of cliffs, but I decided to use it here to show you guys how these gradients make cliffs look much better. I use andesite as middle block because if you put attention to it, it's slightly darker than stone, so it acts as a really nice transition. You can also use some light grade concrete powder for the very tippy top of the cliff and add some cobblestone at the bottom, replacing some of the stairs and slabs you placed before. Next is to replace the ground below the cliff with coarse dirt, leaves, and gravel for detail. Also, you can come in and add dead bushes, ferns, a bit of grass. Also add some coarse dirt in the edge of the cliffs, since the dirt in that area is probably not very stable for plants to grow. And finally, just go and add bushes around the edge. I have no idea why, but it makes it feel so much more complete. Before anything else, I would like to remind you that if you're enjoying this video, it would be extremely appreciated that you subscribe, and if you would like to see my building process or you find me enjoyable, go and follow me on Twitch. I'll be leaving those in the description. Now it's time to learn about hills. As you can see, I started by making the outlines, or the skeleton as I would like to call it, of the hill. This I reckon is the biggest step toward building good looking hills in Minecraft. Just as an acceleration, I want to say that for me, terraforming is divided into two main branches: transformation and handmade terrain. In this video, I'm focusing a lot more in handmade terrain than transformation. Handmade terrain is more about creating your own terrain for a build or place, perhaps custom biomes, which we could talk about in another video. And transformation is more about merging Minecraft terrain with your builds. In this time-lapse you can see that I'm using two different methods to build the skeleton of the hill. The first one that I use is one I like to call layering, which is building the skeleton with the outlines of the layers. The second one is what you're looking at here, where I build these legs to the hill, which help to decide the width of each layer and the steepness of the hill. Each one of them have their advantages and their disadvantages. Personally, I find easier to do layering, but I wanted to show both because for some of you it might be easier to use the other method. If you have any other methods of doing hills, leave them in the comment section. I would love to read you guys. Something else you have to do is to decide how you will bring down your hills. If you have enough space, you can bring them down gradually with layers, but if you're like me and run out of space, you can use cliffs now that you learned how to build them. Another tip to make these hills look more natural is to decide small areas where you're going to have mini cliffs, maybe just 1 to 3 blocks tall, to add variation to the terrain, like you watch me do here. Now that you have all the skeleton of the hill done, it's time to fill it in. The biggest advice I can give you for this is not actually mine, it's from Fwip. I'll be leaving his channel in the description so you can check it out. This tip is to use double dirt, something that I've talked about in my streams. It's basically to fill everything with at least 2 layers of dirt. This might be annoying, especially if you're playing in survival, but I can tell it will prevent a whole lot of problems that you might encounter if you don't use double dirt. Also, a tip if you need to get dirt for your terraforming projects in survival like me is that you can use all the dirt below your terraformed areas, and that's a great way to get all the dirt you'll need for the double dirt layers, and you might as well use those strips to spawn proof the area below your terraformed hills, which tend to get pretty full of mobs. As you can see, these are the mini cliffs that I talked about earlier. I really recommend throwing some of those in your hill, and as you can see now, this is how you can use cliffs to bring your terrain down. Something really important is that even if you're making custom terrain, you try to merge your terraforming with Minecraft's default terrain. That way, it will have a natural flow to your world, instead of just being like, oh, this is a boring plain terrain, and then whoa, this terraforming is impressive, and then oh, boring terrain again. You really want a transition between those, so even if you keep having boring plain terrain areas, your terraform will look like it's part of something and not just something that spawned into existence in the middle of nowhere. Okay, now it's time to start detailing your terrain. Here I decided to just throw some gravel, coarse dirt and pad blocks to texture the ground. Remember when I said double dirt? Well, this is one of the steps that will become 10 times easier because of it. Because without it you wouldn't be able to place gravel or any gravity affected blocks, for example. Also, replacing all the ground would be a pain in the back. Here I'm just adding some ferns and greenery to the area using custom trees, which are a great way to improve the looks of everything. Leave me in the comment section what type of trees you want me to make a tutorial for. I will also be leaving my custom tree tutorial in the description of the video so you can check it out. Here I just kept adding detail with grass, adding bushes, rock, stone buttons and flowers to make it feel more of a complete terraform. No particular tips here Just want to say that you should think about the biome and the weather of your terraformed area, because that will determine what you will use for detailing, but I won't be covering that in this video. Now, let's move on to ponds. The first thing is to decide the size, place, and just dig it up. In this video, I'll cover more of like the dirty, swampy pond that you might find in a forest. It's always really useful to remove all the water and then replace it. So once you have your empty pond, let's start replacing the grass around the pond with coarse dirt, potsoil, and soul soil. Basically all types of blocks that look as mud. If you ever go to a pond IRL, you'll notice that in most of them the edges are just mud with all sorts of rock, sticks, and plants. So we are trying to bring that into Minecraft. Once you finish the edges, work on the bottom. Add leaves, rocks, wood. You want to add all kinds of stuff that might have fallen into the pond over time. Don't forget to add mud, and once you are happy with the looks of it, it's time to fill the pond using water. Also use some bone meal to add some seagrass, add a bit of kelp, and on the top of the pond, maybe add some lily pads. As you can see, you can use a trapdoor with pink coral fan to create a rather beautiful lily pad flower. You can finish off by placing some of the mossy stones in the edges alongside with some bushes. And that's it. That's how you terraform a pond.
And that was it for today's video. Hopefully you were able to learn a bit on terraforming, and you'll be able to use all the tips and tricks that I gave in this video for your own buildings. If you have any questions, don't forget to leave them in the comment section. I'll be answering all of those, and hopefully this will be extremely helpful for all of you. Also, if you reached this part of the video, I want to thank you very much for watching all the video, and I would just like to remind you that if you enjoyed it or you learned from it, it would be extremely appreciated that you subscribe or that you share the video. So, hope you have a great day and see ya!